Did it get easier as time went on, or you know, when you first arrived, it must have been a shock to
It got
suddenly
harder
find
as
yourself.
time went on.
It got
harder and harder and harder and harder and harder.
In what ways? How?
Because they were destroying my life. People think that prison gets easier because you're more used to it. Well, you're not more used to prison. What you're actually more used to is the routine of prison. That's not the same as getting used to prison. The worst part of prison I've ever been in was the open prison I was in, because I hated it so much.
How is that different to the previous?
Because they treat you like, they really, really treat you like, because they think they've got a hold over you, because you're in an open prison. And if you...
Is that the officers or the people, the inmates you're with?
The officers, really. The officers, and not always the staff themselves, but more, you know, the guys in suits, the governors and people like that. You know, the open prison I was in, I mean, you know, quite a few of the senior staff were actually sacked just after I left.
Oh, really? Because they were behaving inappropriately?
Because they were criminals.
Oh, they were criminals themselves?
Well, they were committing criminal acts, and that makes them a criminal, doesn't it? Yet these were the people who were actually in charge of me and deciding what I should and what I shouldn't be doing.
Can you give us some examples of some of the worst times in prison?
The worst times in prison is I went through a period when I was in and out of the punishment blocks. I was really, really quite disturbed mentally. Some people very, very close to me, which is something I rarely used to allow to happen. I wouldn't let anyone close to me. That was just too painful for me. But I let some people close to me, and then they died, and I was having a real bad time of it, and I'd become a heroin addict, and I was quite into a really, really serious heroin habit at that time.
Were drugs very readily available there, did you find?
Yeah.
It
Inevitably.
was easy to...
Inevitably.
Yeah.
You know, there's 1,000,001 ways to bring drugs into prison. You know, and it's not just inmates doing it, staff are doing it as well.
Had you used drugs before you went into prison, or did that develop?
Never even
that
seen
side
one.
of it? Really, that?
If you'd have talked to me about heroin, I wouldn't have even known what you're talking about. I've had no idea what you were talking about.
And was that one way of coping, do you think, from day to day?
Yeah, heroin's instant karma. You don't feel anything, and that was my problem. It was the emotional pain I was going through every single day. Absolute torment, which never ever stopped, morning, noon and night. And, you know, if you're lucky, you might sleep an hour or two a night, or you might sleep for an hour, then a couple of hours later sleep for another hour, and then wake up with nightmares and sweat pouring off you, and still in that
So it was more psychological reasons that were keeping you awake rather than the other inmates. It was literally the dreams you were having, the thoughts you were having.
Yeah, and of course, you know, I mean, suffering really deep and dark depressions and constant thoughts of suicide, which for me was, you know, something I've been going through all the time I was in prison. And the only reason I didn't actually commit suicide is because I was determined to win. They weren't going to beat me that way. I wasn't going to allow them to beat me that way. And on the other side of it was, you know, I love my life. I've always loved my life. I love my life now. You know, good or bad, doesn't really matter. It is what it is. I love my life, and I enjoy it. I really, really enjoy it. And I don't care if I've got 2 pennies in my pocket or £2 million. It doesn't make any difference to me. That's just paper.
In some ways, it almost made you stronger.
Prison made me stronger because I had to be, and it's broke my heart a lot of times. Prison, it broke my back. It broke my mind. You know, it bust me up good and proper, and I'm not afraid to say that. You know, because I've seen far bigger than me come crashing down, and there's no shame in that. It just is what it is, because we all have a breaking point, and sometimes you need to actually reach that point and get across the other side of it to actually be stronger. And I did that many, many times. But many times they broke me deliberately. They tried to break your spirit. They tried to take your freedom away from you. And they can't take your freedom away from you, because freedom's, you know, it's in there and it's in there.
Yeah.
You know, it's not physical. You know, they can lock you up in prison, but, you know, there's far less you can do about that, you know, other than escaping. But to actually imprison you mentally that's the cruelest thing of all, I think. It really is the cruelest thing of all. And they tried that for 25 years. It is a form of psychological torture, and it is constant, and it is grueling, and it is 24 hours a day. It never ever stops, because all the time you're sitting there thinking, well, why am I actually here? There is actually no reason why I'm here.
Yeah.
And this person has no right to be treating me this way, and these people have no right to be doing this to me. And it just goes round and round and round and round in your head.
Did you ever, because I obviously it's very hard for me to understand what it's actually like to be in there, did you ever start to think, actually, have I done something wrong? You know, in the times when you're going...
When I was a young kid at 15, I mean, I had quite a lot of problems when I was that age, because, you know, of course I was a very, very vulnerable kid, and of course you got all these psychiatrists and psychologists and prison governors and, you know, adults telling you, actually, you have done this, you just don't remember, or you're so mentally ill that you're hiding from it.
So you were talking to them what those people while you were in prison?
No,
this is before?
They taught you, you know, as a matter of course, doing interviews and this and that and everything else. And, you know, of course, at that sort of age, you see these people as, you know, knowing what there is to know, and never ever really believing them, and at the same time wondering, you know, what the hell is going on with it all, because there was actually no reason why I should be there. Yet they were giving me a reason.
Yeah.
And it was a false reason, and I didn't understand it, which just confused me even more.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I mean, they were actually quite brutal to me many, many, many times, and they were brutal for a purpose. You know, it's because of they thought I was something I wasn't, and they thought they had the right to brutalise me, and other people thought they had the right to brutalise me to try and break my spirit and stop me fighting.
Yeah.
Which just made me fight even more, and just made me angrier and angrier and angrier.
So the fact that everybody around you believed you were something, this, you know, a child abuser, and did that never for one moment made you stop believing that you weren't that person? It never sent you
No, because they can't. They could have killed me on any day of the week, of the year, in them 25 years I was in prison. It wouldn't have made the slightest blind bit of difference. Wouldn't have changed anything. I wasn't there. Yeah. How are you going to change that?
Exactly.
How can you change? They can't change it. And it's that realisation that actually they were, in actual fact, they were powerless. They didn't have any power over me whatsoever, other than to contain me physically.
Yeah.
They couldn't control me. They couldn't control my mind. They couldn't control my feelings and what I thought. You know, they could control my environment, and that was pretty much about it. And once you come to that sort of realisation, you do actually find a sense of, you know, a true sense of freedom. And they can't take that away from you. So I always had that with me. And I always had the fact that, you know, they'd lost even before they started. They couldn't win. How could they win? Yeah. You know, so in all that time, it was actually I who had the power over them.